If you have ongoing exposure to controlling people, it's a virtual certainty that you're going to experience blurry boundaries, which is why I've created the extensive online course called This Is Me, Establishing Boundaries with the Controllers in Your Life. There's a link below that will give you all of the details, and I hope that you would find it therapeutic. Way back in my early years of training, I was always drawn towards the topic of developmental psychology. And this is a manner of study that talks about all the different ways that you can go about learning maturity and how to grow into a healthy way of life, how to learn how to have trust and empathy, and how to build social skills and manage yourself well whenever strains or conflicts came along, and how to then develop a sense of purpose and principles and meaning, those kinds of things. If you lived with a narcissistic parent, I don't have to tell you the obvious, but you did not really receive good training in terms of how to develop those kinds of things. Narcissistic parents are people who are in great pain, but instead of them coming to terms with whatever is churning on the inside of themselves, they very regretfully and unfortunately put their pain onto their children. And you may have once been that child. And then whenever the pain has been placed upon that child, it can take a great deal of energy and effort to get beyond it. It can be done, and I'm going to talk about that. But basically, we can go back and say that those children who were born into a family with narcissism at the helm were waiting for someone to share the message that says, here, you're going to be loved. Here in my presence, I want you to know that you are enough. Now, sometimes if you were the golden child, you may have thought that you heard that kind of message, but even then it would be very conditional. It's all based on you doing all the right things. Scapegoats, though, they understand, well, I didn't feel that way at all. In addition, children are wanting to hear statements that says something to the effect of, you're competent, and I want you to learn how to build upon your internal competence. Let me help you and assist you in that regard. I want you to feel free when you're in my presence. I want you to feel safe when you're with me. Let's explore. Let's be open. Let's practice good coping skills, and I, as the parent, am going to be very willing to model that for you. Narcissistic parents have next to no conception of what I just mentioned. There are multiple ingredients that they bring to the equation, and I want to run through several of them with you. And you'll notice that the more exposure you have to these ingredients, then the more it's going to bring some damage to you as they put their pain onto you. For example, one of the things that we know about narcissistic parents is they don't respect their child's uniqueness. In their minds, you exist to fit the mold that they have already predetermined. And that's enormous. I've spoken to so many adults who've thought, well, life is all about figuring out what the agenda is and living according to it, even if it feels rather awkward to do so. In addition, narcissistic parents have opinions and beliefs and perspectives that they want you to have, but they don't talk with you about it. They just simply make demands. Here's how you're supposed to believe, or these are the priorities you'd better have according to what I say. Likewise, narcissistic parents gravitate toward critical communication. You'll hear them talk about, in criticisms about anything and everything. It can be something really small, something they see on a TV commercial, for example, or they can talk back to the TV when the news is on, or when they have withdrawn from somebody in a social setting or a family setting. They'll discuss all the things that they see that are wrong. Judgment is very strong and prominent in the minds of the narcissist. And of course, if you're a little child, you're on the receiving end of that. If you haven't been criticized yet, you know, well, all I have to do is just show myself to be me, and here it's coming. I know it's going to happen. Narcissistic parents will tell, but they do a very poor job of listening. There's not a real two-way street here. There's more of this mindset that says, Well, in our house, there's one person who knows everything and sets all the rules, and it's not you. And they're very open, and they're very willing to remind you of that over and over. Now, in addition, and this is so common, narcissists, when they discipline, and I hesitate to use that word discipline because in its classical sense, it means to teach and in a very healthy way. But when they try to discipline you, it's grounded in fear and shame and guilt. Basically, whenever you're with that person and you have made a mistake or you've just shown yourself to be different or other, they'll come down on you in a scoreboarding kind of way. What's wrong with you? You can't do something like that. And then when they discipline, it tends to be applied in an angry fashion. I've heard so many stories of people who grew up inside a narcissistic home with parents who would be rageful or angry or harsh to the point of abuse. And of course, what it does is it just wears that kid out to the extent that they become a shell of themselves, knowing that the anger is going to come. Also, one of the things that we know about narcissistic parents is their at-home persona can be quite different from their out there persona. Out in public, they might try to show themselves as being friendly and all like that, chairman of this and on the greeting committee or whatever it might be. But behind the scenes, it's like, well, the kid's thinking, I see a whole different person here. They don't match their public and private persona. Likewise, the narcissist will make the child's behavior a referendum about who they are. When you're out there, I don't want you to show the world that we have problems, and if you do something wrong, that reflects poorly on me, so you'd better get out there and you better be a right representation of me, to the extent that they don't allow you to have your own distinctives. And then in addition, these narcissistic individuals or parents, they don't offer apologies for what they do. If we inside the family have a problem, you are the one who instigated it, and you'd better get your act together. Now, basically, when we're talking about narcissistic parents, they tend to fall in one of two categories. One would be they can be very authoritarian in the sense that there is little room for anyone else's thoughts beyond their own. Or many times they can be more of a neglectful type of parenting where they just don't care about your feelings and your needs. And sometimes you can feel like you're isolated from them. It's like, well, they don't really know me very well and they don't seem to want to engage with me. And sometimes there can be a combination of both. Now, if you grew up with narcissistic parents, it can have a real impact on you throughout your adult years. Many times when I talk with people, you may know that I have a history of conducting anger workshops and things like that. And people that have a lot of anger, or they're strongly defensive, or they're rebellious, they can, as we start looking into that, we find out they had a history where there was a reason for them to feel that way. And if you have dysregulated emotions during your adult years, many times it's an offshoot of what you experienced through your childhood years, and you're carrying the pain that narcissistic person placed upon you. So the question that you have, and I know I'm going to say this in a very brief kind of way, and it's something that you might need to discuss with a therapist or with a trusted friend, is, can I get out from under this pain that the narcissistic parent did not resolve within themselves but placed upon me? Can I adjust? And of course, as a therapist, my answer is absolutely you can. That's why I do the work that I do. And that's why I refer people, now that I'm retired from my therapy, to other therapists. Multiple questions that you can focus on as you try to get beyond the impact that narcissistic parents placed upon you. One question is, do you have worth? Now, that's ideally something that narcissistic parent could have taught inside of you. Worth is ultimately your birthright. You're born with worth. It's not something that you are given. You just simply have it. And so I'm hoping that you can learn how to go into that space and try to reclaim the worth that may not have been very well trained within you. Or another question that I like to ask people who have had the narcissistic parents, and that is, what does it mean for you to be free? Many people who grew up under this narcissistic rule are so accustomed to thinking inside the mold, and that you have to stay inside the grooves. When I say, why don't you just let yourself be totally free to be what you are? It's like, what a concept. You have a free will. What would it be like for you if you could learn how to use that in the way that you deem to be appropriate? That being the case, as a free person, what kind of traits would you like to be known for? What kind of priorities would you like to pursue? So often I've spoken to adults of narcissistic parents who are living inside of traits and priorities and preferences and life circumstances that they really don't like. Well, pull back. What do you like? And where do you want to go with that? This is your life, and you get to decide. And if it means that you make significant adjustments, what would those adjustments be? Can you make your adjustments and change your priorities and mannerisms without having to offer an apology? That's another question I like to ask these adults who grew up with narcissistic parents. Can you adjust your mannerisms without having to go into a place of animosity? You don't have to have this bitter, I hate you kind of mindset, because they just kind of put you in the same ballpark as where the narcissistic parents were. And then would you be willing to pass along your adjustments and your better insights to the people in your presence, and certainly to the generation that would come behind you? Narcissistic parents want to have the final word in your life. That's part of their need for control, and that's part of them infusing you with their pain. But you know what? It's not all about them. The bottom line is you do have an independent mind, and you're not someone, you're not being disloyal when you say, I don't want to do things according to their old standards. I have a different way of living and being. And the bottom line is, when I allow myself to be distinct, when I allow myself to live into what I believe is a healthy pattern of development, we have a term for that. It's called self-affirmation. That's something I hope that you can lock into, and in doing so, even if you did have narcissistic influences in your deep years, I'm hoping that you can say, today's a new day and I'm going in a very different direction. And I hope that videos such as this can give you some good food for thought and a lot of reflection. And if you've not hit that subscribe button, I'd encourage you to do so, the notification bell that goes with it. I truly appreciate being with you on your journey. And I know that a topic like this is something that can generate the need or the desire to seek out some therapy, which is why I've joined with a sponsor who can bring online therapy to you. There's a whole team of licensed professional therapists and experience that you could choose from. I strongly encourage you, if the need is there, seek that out, and I hope that you'll be glad that you did. You'll need to get a good combination between yourself and that therapist, but when you do, it can be so beneficial for you. Also, I've put together courses. One is called This Is Me. It's about establishing your boundaries, and another, Free to Be, about finding yourself despite controllers. And these are multiples of videos and teaching events, or teaching writings and questions and all that are meant to walk you through the change process. I've put a lot of work into it. It would require a lot of work from you. Perhaps you would find those beneficial. We have links below for that. In addition, we have my books, etc. I know that narcissistic parents can create an influence that can last for a long time, but the bottom line is this, and that is, you still do have that independent mind. And in that independence, I hope that you can decide all of that control and entitlement and shame and all that they brought to the equation is something that you're going to step away from. And instead, you can say, I stand for dignity, respect, and civility. That's who I am. And when you're able to claim that and live inside of it, you're then positioned to become a person of peace. I so want you to find your peace, regardless of what your background is. That's something you deserve. That's something you can live into.